is so fragile, and we're constantly reminded just how fragile life can be, especially when we or a loved one is told we have cancer. Cancer survivor myself, I can tell you, we still feel very alone in this journey.
There's a study that's been showing that patients who are socially isolated have a worse prognosis, have a worse outcome than patients who are socially interconnected.
Buddies for Life is a non-profit cancer support group for those whose life has been impacted by cancer. We'll match you with the perfect buddy. Humor, hope, heart, and hugs.
Humor, hope, heart, hugs, and a whole lot of love.
We're offering you a free membership, so please sign up today. Share this with your friends and family, and support this community in every way you can. No one should face cancer alone.
I am a chemo buddy for life.
We are a buddies network.
No one does cancer alone.
Be a buddy.
And we are all here for you as a community of love.
We are chemo buddies for life.
And if you've heard 3 words, you have cancer, for yourself or someone else, you belong with us at Chemo Buddies for Life.
Healing through connections.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome, Jason. Great to see you here this morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Kicking off Monday on the right foot.
We are indeed. And Jason and I always have fun when we get together, folks. So this will be a great show today. I'm sure you will enjoy it. So let me tell you a little bit about my friend, Jason Tracy. Jason and I have known each other for a little while, been working together on some projects, some very exciting things that we've been doing. Jason's my ideal when it comes to sales because Jason makes sales easy. And if you're like me, you don't have a natural sales personality. You may struggle with making sales, as I have done in my career. I mean, when I had my staffing firm, I always hired people to do that. I still had to train them. I still had to, work with them and all of that. But they had the job of asking for the sale. And one of the things I love about the work that Jason does is that he teaches you how to make that easy, so that asking for the sale is just part of the dialogue. It's part of the conversation that you're having, right, Jason?
Well, that's absolutely it. And I hear so many people say, I'm not a natural salesperson. But when they start talking to me about their passions and the things they love, I feel I can get those feelings from that, and I can understand or get passionate just like they can. And so I think a lot of people, it's just a lot of head trash. It's a lot of negative beliefs about what sales is. And so that's why I'm so passionate about showing people that sales is actually serving at the highest level, that
Yeah.
you can do it no matter who you are, for the most part. You can do it for no matter who you are. And I've been able to teach people from all spectrums of life, from the extroverted person like myself that likes to, the high eye that likes to have fun and joke around, or the really introverted person that doesn't get energy from being around people and is more of a quiet person. I've taught that person how to be a successful salesperson.
Awesome.
It doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah. So one of the things, Jason, that I want to point out to everybody is you were not born with a sales spoon in your mouth. We talk about being born with a silver spoon. You weren't born with that sales spoon in your mouth, right? It was a journey to get here. Tell us a little bit about that journey. I know it was painful.
It was a painful journey, and I got into sales. I was working at a nursing home, and I knew that wasn't what I was going to do for the rest of my life. I was paying my way through college at that time, and there was only so many hours in the day. I was working a lot of overtime, trying to pay for myself. I grew up really poor, and so getting to college and paying for it, that was all on me. And so everything was on me. And so I was working full time, trying to go to college. And I'm like, there's got to be an easier way. I felt like I was good with people. I felt like I was persuasive. For some reason, people would give me things, or they'd do my work for me without me even really asking. And I'm like, there's something to my relationships here. I feel like I could be really good at sales. And so I answered an ad in the newspaper, and I got a sales job. And then they tried to teach me all the gimmicks and all the scripts and all the, I'll never forget the coupon book. Selling coupon book was door to door, and they're like, put it in their hand and let them hold it for about 30 seconds and then grab it out of their hands really quickly. And I'm like, why? And they're like, because it's gonna create a desire that they want it back, they want it back. It's like, okay, I just couldn't get with that. I felt so cheesy, and because of that, I struggled really, really hard. And I was facing repossessions. I through a little bit later, I was facing evictions. I was behind on my bills. Like, life was very, very chaotic, and I didn't feel good. I had nightmares at night. I hated going to work. I felt like I must not be cut out for this. And luckily, I realized what it was that made me successful when I was at the nursing home, just interacting with people. Because at the end of the day, this is a people business. Exactly. I was right in my intuition that I would be good at sales. I was not wise enough to understand that what people were going to try to teach me was the wrong way. It took me really figuring that out and realizing that sales is so easy. We just make it so hard.
We do indeed. Out of fear. Absolutely. Out of fear.
Even it's all fear. Even the really scammy, slimy salesperson that you've had to deal with, or the person that doesn't tell you about all the things. Like, you get surprised by all these pieces on your bill or whatever when the first thing shows up, or those people are all based on fear.
Yeah.
And it sounds so silly. Why wouldn't you tell somebody about something that was going on? You're doing it based off of a fear of rejection.
Right. And I love the way that you explain that, about what you just said about why wouldn't you tell them? If you have a solution to their problem, why wouldn't you tell them? And you give this great analogy of having dinner with someone. You want to share that?
Going out on a date, right? So think about it. You go out on a date, and this is the first time you're going out with somebody, and you look across the table at the person. You start telling them why you would be an excellent husband or wife, why you would have the best looking kids, why you have the best support group. Your parents would be there to babysit the kids, and that person's going to get up from the table and run. And when you try to call them, they're not going to answer their phone. In anybody who's been on the bottom of an end of dating, where you think you had a good time, and then you call that person over and over again, and they don't answer you back. It's because you probably did that. You probably did something like that. And and nobody, you have to date somebody. Be curious, be interested in that other person. Try to understand who they are. Don't talk about what you want and what you desire. And that's why sales, most of sales is done from an inward mindset. most people are walking around thinking about what my commission looks like, what my, I've got to pay my bills, or my wife wants to go on that cruise or go on that vacation, or we need a bigger house, or I've got to pay for college for my kids, or whatever it is. Or the manager is going to write me up if I don't sell because I'm a low performer. All those things make us think about ourselves. When in sales, the most important person is whoever it is that is across the table from you, whoever it is that you're communicating with. Be curious about that person and get out of your own head and thinking about all the things that you have going on. And it's easier said than done, but it can be done. And once it's done, it's easy.
It's realizing that we're impacting lives at a very base level. When you provide your prospect, your client, with the services that they need, you literally are changing lives or impacting lives. I think about it in the business world. So many times, I have no statistics on this, but I know that I know of people where this has happened. So I know that there are times when that business fails because they didn't get what they needed to have to create that successful business. It can end in divorce, the family falling apart. It can end in suicide of that business owner because they are so gutted at having failed, and they have this mountain of debt, and they can't see how they're going to get out of that. And literally they have committed suicide as a result of that.
And that's horrible and it's sad, but it's also horrible and sad to continue living a life thinking that you're a failure.
Yes.
Going back and getting a job and feeling like you failed and you can't live your dream life, or you can't pursue your purpose and passion because you're a failure and you're never meant to be a business owner. I had this neighbor a couple years ago that came over to my house, and she used to own a bakery, and she was telling me about how she was so passionate about all the things that she loved when she owned her bakery. She loved getting up early in the morning. She loved the commute to the bakery. She loved her people that worked for her. They were so passionate about about taking care of people. She loved watching people eat the baked goods and just have enjoyment on their face. And then she said, but we couldn't make money, and we ended up having to dip into her husband's paycheck in order to make payroll for themselves, and it ended up being a disaster. And it went from this place of passion and energy to saying, you couldn't pay me to start a business again. You couldn't pay me to be a business owner again, thinking that she's a failure.
Right.
And I turned around really quickly and was like, wouldn't it be fair to say that if they would have paid you in the first place, you'd still be doing that today? And she's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you said that they couldn't pay you to own a business again. Like, if they would have paid you in the first place, you would still be doing that. I saw all this passion. I saw all this energy. It's all about how do you make that money? And there's a way to do it. And that's why I'm so passionate about doing what I'm doing. That's why I started my business 4 years ago, is because I got this glimpse and I had built up a successful organization, a successful business within my industry. And I saw all these other business owners who were coming to me and asking me for advice. And a lot of it had to do, a lot of their failures or failures that they were having had to do with sales or leadership. And at the end of the day, that's all just human communication. In human communication and mindset, you've got to have a mindset shift. You've got to see people differently. You got to be curious about what's going on in that person's head in leadership or in sales. And so, as I saw, like to your point, all these businesses failing and thinking about the suicides, thinking about the ruined marriages, because that's a real thing. If your business is failing, first off, how much resentment, how much anger, what do you have going on inside you? But then if your spouse doesn't understand where the money is going and they're beating you up too, that's the end of that. And then and then luckily you live, but then you could be living a miserable existence. So is it even worth it?
And then there's the children that are in that relationship, I mean, because a marriage is not just between the husband and wife. There are children involved usually, and what goes on in the company, in the couple, impacts the children. And so that's a generational impact.
Yes.
So as we are able, people like you and like myself, as we're able to help people move past those challenges, whether it be sales or something else, then we're able to positively impact generations to come, as well as many people. Even that my passion is being part of the ripple effect, right? That is created when I help somebody else step into their potential. when I can help somebody else really achieve their dreams, and that dream impacts other people, I get to be part of the ripple effect.
Isn't that amazing?
It's awesome. It gets you up every morning, right?
It really does. And even looking back before I started my business, it was always that ripple effect of thinking like, if I wouldn't have been here as a leader, like what would have happened to this particular person?
Yeah.
And it's not an ego thing. It's
No.
just, I know that I stepped in with a massive amount of caring and pushed this person,
Right.
or was curious and figured out who this person was and helped them achieve their dreams and help them see more clearly, help them
Yeah.
shift their lens because they were getting the same results because they were thinking the same. To help
Right.
somebody shift the way they think. And that's something that lasts a lifetime. And watching
Yeah.
people go from point A to point Z while they worked with me, that was, I would sit back and think about every single person and what if I would have never came into their life? Maybe
Yeah.
somebody else would have came in their life. And it's not an ego trip on my aspect. I
Right.
just know that there's not a lot of great leadership out there. I just know that there's not a lot of great salespeople out there in the sense of,
Yeah.
of doing all the things based around fear and teaching people how to either sell for a cheap price or how to rip people off because they're trying to put things in there that people don't know is going on in there.
Yeah.
And it's just not good.
Question for you. Would you agree with the premise that it's not about the money, that the money is the recognition, if you will, for having served that person or that company, that it's about serving, and that if the money is what drives you, I don't want to necessarily say that you're not going to be as successful, but you certainly aren't going to be as intrinsically satisfied, as internally satisfied.
Yeah.
Can you talk to that?
I've definitely seen people chase money and chase objects and thinking that next thing was going to fill that hole and fill that void.
Yeah.
It really doesn't. And I think that as a human, that every single one of our purpose is to serve others, is to take care of others, is to take care of humanity. And when we don't do that and we chase objects instead, you always see the people that are living superficially. And they may seem happy on the outside because they have this huge house and they have all these nice cars and they're collecting women or men or, whatever it is, whatever.
Yeah.
I've worked closely with these people and there's constantly trying to fill a void. And usually that void turns into drug addiction.
True. Yeah.
Not everybody, but it really
not
is
everybody.
one of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. But if your motivation is the service, and then what you can do with the money that comes from providing that good service and value, because let's face it, you can do a lot more good in the world with money than you can without it. Your sphere of influence is or sphere of opportunity is more limited if you don't have the funds that you can reach out.
Well, and that's there's this fine line, right? Because everything we're talking about sounds like great, but you have to understand that you need to make money.
Exactly.
And I work with a lot of heart-centered people. My clients are heart-centered people. I couldn't work with somebody that is just in it for the money alone,
right?
Because they will go do anything they have to do to go and make that money, and it's going to be outside of the way that I'm going to coach them and teach them.
Right.
But the heart-centered people are the ones that have such a hard time asking for money. They're the ones that they got to do that extra thing. They've got to maybe drop the price a little bit because they want to just give that extra thing, or money isn't the most important thing to them. They just want to serve. Well, you've got to understand that in order to serve people, you do need to make money. And then also, this is the other crazy thing is if you're not charging money, people don't take you seriously.
Yeah.
I've been in a position where I've charged too less money. Like I've gave a quote that was too less because I was
too small.
Small. Because I was worried about what people were going to think about the price, and then that I didn't get hired or I got looked at as a joke because my pricing was so low.
It was too low. So money is definitely necessary. It is a means to an end, and it is a satisfying reward or recognition for the work that you've done.
Yes. Yeah. Nobody Simon Sinek says this. No, there's in leadership or in business period, nobody is mad about giving somebody money.
Right.
They just want the reward out of it, right?
Right.
They want to see a progress out of it. They want to be able to get to their vision. I help people
Right.
grow their businesses and see their and make their visions or bring their visions to life. That's a phenomenal serving right there. Just watching, it's easy to get very content as you're watching people bring their dreams to life. And believe me, I know it, like, because it's happened where it's like I will kick my feet up and realize, oh, I need to go get more clients because because these people are killing it, and I'm fulfilled by that.
Yeah, absolutely. We haven't even mentioned the name of your company. We just dove in here. So let's talk a little bit about your company and who you serve. And I love your company. I love your slogan. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So my company's called Roar Consulting. And as I mentioned, I work with heart-centered entrepreneurs that are in business, following their purpose, their passion, their expertise. And in sales, doesn't happen to be one of those purpose, passions, or expertises. So a lot of coaches and consultants, people in the medical field, which is great. So chiropractors, brain therapy. I've worked with a brain therapy center now. So it's the people that are following their purpose and passion. But again, how do they sell, or how do they take that experience even to another level?
Right. They have a mission in the world.
Yes.
But money is necessary to complete that mission, right?
Absolutely.
To fulfill that mission. Yeah. And that means sales.
And that means sales. It means that you have to sell.
And the bottom line is it's sales.
You have to sell. And that word can mean, you can call it anything you want. But at the end of the day, it's selling. And everybody has to sell in one point in their life. I would always interview people that had never done sales before, and I'd ask them about what's the best sale you've ever had in your life, and they'd almost every single time remind me they've never been in sales before. Well, you've sold a boyfriend or a girlfriend, you've sold a spouse, you had to sell your sibling on why you deserve the extra piece of cake. You had to, you had to sell throughout your lifetime.
Yeah.
You all have to sell. You just don't recognize it.
Yeah.
I had a course, live course last week in which we talked about on one of your podcasts, and one of the students said that she has a hard time asking for money, but she has no problem telling people to go see that new movie. She has no problem telling somebody to go try that new food or that new restaurant. She has no problem telling people to go out and do these things. That's selling. Yeah. It's using your influence to get somebody else to go do something, and she's not making any money off from that. But then when it comes down to selling her product, it's all of a sudden it's hard to do.
That's a biggie and a common thing. I know throughout my life, I've been involved in various projects where I had to go ask for donations from people for this project, for a charitable project. One time it was something going on at a hospital, and who knows what else. And that was never a challenge for me, to go out and ask someone to support this good cause, to support this charity was not an issue, but to ask them to support me was another story. And I think that's really key. As my mind is kind of connecting the dots right now, because sales is not about asking them to support me.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. No, you're not in donation collecting.
No,
you're not a charity. You're literally giving them a good or a service, right?
Exactly. For which they're willing to pay fair and equitable value for. It's an exchange of value.
You're not out there asking for donations.
Right. And you're providing in that value something that can change lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how do you flip that switch? How do you get comfortable asking?
Yeah.
Right? So let me ask you, I don't know, I've probably used this analogy because it's been my favorite one lately on one of our conversations. But if you're sitting down with a friend, have you ever had this happen where you're sitting down with a friend and you have something in your teeth, and then you go to the bathroom, or you get home and you realize you've had something in your teeth and it's been there the whole time?
Right.
What do you start, like, why didn't that person tell you?
Yeah.
Why didn't that person tell you there's something in between your teeth? How do you feel about that person? When you sat at lunch and had a full conversation, and you go to the bathroom and
that was there from the salad on.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
why didn't that other person tell you? Did they want you to
Right.
look like a fool?
Right.
Probably not. No, they
Yeah.
just felt bad for some
Right.
reason to tell you, to break the news to you that you have something in between your teeth. Well, why? We all have teeth. We all
Yeah.
eat, and sometimes things get stuck between our teeth. If you're a friend, you're going to say, Regina, hey, you got something in between your teeth. Are
Right.
you going to be upset at me? Oh my God, Jason, I can't believe you told me that. No, I don't know anybody in history that's ever got upset that somebody told them there's something between their teeth, right? Now, why am I talking about this? Well, if you're sitting with somebody and they're telling you about what they have going on in life, and you know that whatever your product or service is, if you have somebody with you, Regina, that's sitting and talking about, like, we're doing well in business, we just don't know where all of our money's going. If you didn't talk to them about what you do, you're just like that person that's not telling them that there's something in between their teeth, because that's something they're telling you because they stress about it. That's something that they're telling you because it keeps them up at night.
And you have the opportunity to fix it. Yeah, absolutely.
Even if you're just giving them, hey, this is what I do, and you're able to give them a couple suggestions, in just because it's not about selling out of the gates. Let's hear more. Like, you know, so it's not about, oh my God, Regina, I can solve your problems. I do this, and this. Like, hey, you know what? This is what I do. Tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Maybe I can help you out.
Provide value. Provide value. Provide value. Provide value. Serve before you ask.
Serve before you
ask. But don't forget to ask.
And please notice the way I ask. Tell me more.
Tell me more. Yeah.
People don't ever think about that question. That's the best question in the world. I could sit here and have a conversation with you just saying, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. Every time you get done talking, tell me more. Because guess what? People like talking about themselves.
Yeah. And if there's a willing ear to hear about their problem, and then that willing ear can solve some of that problem, that's amazing. Jason, I'm so sorry. We are out of time.
Oh, no. Wow, the half hour
all day.
Well, hey, I'm glad we got to, because we talked about the problem, right? And to recap this really quick, we talked about the problem that's out there. Here is the solution. Be curious, all right? We put so much pressure on ourselves when we sell. We put so much pressure on ourselves thinking that nobody wants to hear what's going on. If you hear someone saying exactly, you're having a conversation, someone's telling you about what's going on, get more info. Tell me more. If you think there's somebody that's in front of you that is a good potential client, ask them questions and be curious about what's going on in their business. Because if you can save them money, you can save them time, you can save them a whole lot of heartache. Why wouldn't you say, hey, this is what I do and this is how I can help you? Right.
And again, saving families, saving lives, saving businesses, saving communities, they're all interconnected. And so, Oh, Jason, you always bring so much value when we get together. I love it. I'm so grateful that you came on the show this morning. Thank you so much. And we'll have you back another time.
Awesome. Yeah, that's 30 minutes. 30 minutes flew by.
You're just going to zoom.
I'm used to doing an hour with you. So I was like, oh, wow, that flew by.
Thanks for joining us, folks. We'll see you next Monday on Pursuing Profit with Principles. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well. All right, folks, we should have some commercials popping up here any second. So we'll just fill some space until then.
All right.
So Jason, tell us real quickly about Eat Faces. Very quickly.
All right. So Eat Faces is to persevere in spite of the circumstances. And I probably don't have time for the whole story, but all the time there's challenges out there. There's things that happen that we can't control. Most of the time we focus on the things that we can't control. What Eat Faces means is no one's going to sit and bail you. No one's going to bail you out. No one's worried about whether you're going to succeed or not. You've got to find a way. You've got to find a way to take action. You got to find a way to go out there and eat faces. And it's all about persevering. We like I said, we all have challenges. We all have bad things going on. Where's the beauty in it? Yeah. Find where you can bless people, you bless yourself within the negative opportunities.
Awesome. So thanks again, Jason Tracy of Roar Consulting, ROAR, Roar Consulting. Love it. Great having you on the show again, Jason.
Thank you for having me.
Talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good morning. Happy Monday. This is America's Supermom with another episode of Mindset and Marketing. Today, we are going to be discussing communication. Communication. That is such an important topic because so often we walk away from conversations not understanding what someone said, not getting what we want, all because of communication. So, I love acronyms, and today we're going to be talking about a phrase, read my lips. So, lips is the acronym. We had a president, that was part of his campaign, read my lips, for him to get votes and saying that whatever he speaks, that is what he's going to do. So, we're going to talk about how lips, that acronym, can apply and help us with communication. So, if you feel like communication is something that you can get a little work in, maybe communicating with leads and converting them to clients, or dealing with issues of communicating with family and friends, then this particular episode is just for you. Communication is an area that all of us need to work in. It's like, you know how it is when you're a parent. And as a parent, if I'm the mother, right, and I say something to one of the kids and it just goes right over their head, but then their dad comes in and says the same thing and they listen, right? Or vice versa. So these things happen because of communication. We have to make sure that we manage our tone, the type of information that we're sharing, and what the outcome is that we desire. So communication is really a two-way street. It doesn't do any good for me to tell a whole speech about how to convert sales to somebody who doesn't speak English. And a lot of times this is what happens. We are on different planes with people and we are just like passing right past each other. We're not even connecting because we are missing the mark when it comes to communication. So this is an area that we all can work on. As you go into different levels with your business, you expand or whatever the case may be, we always have to be conscious of how we're communicating to others. So the first element of communication and what we're going to explore today is language. Okay. So language. This is really a good thing to really monitor when you're communicating with people. For example, if you want to give a formal presentation and the person you're talking to uses slang, right? So it may not be an issue that this person is trying to be disrespectful. It could be that based on where they're from, their perspective is that is their culture of speaking, right? And so a lot of times we get offended possibly ourselves because we feel like I'm taking this seriously. They're not. I'm using proper English and they're not using proper English or whatever the case may be. So I'm just using that as an example. So when we find out that there is something that just doesn't measure up with our communication, something not in alignment, it is this time that we need to explore where is the other person coming from. For example, me being the age that I am, 51, if I'm trying to communicate to my daughter who is 7, it's up to me to understand the language that she needs to hear in order for me to get a response. So if I'm going to talk to her about the chemical makeup of my lip gloss, right? And I just know this because I'm a Mary Kay consultant. But it's all kind of chemicals. I look at the back and look at the ingredients, and I'm talking all these long terms. She's like, okay, that's Greek to me, right? This is what happens a lot of times when we talk to our children. We are using vocabulary and language and imagery that's way above their head. We have to remember to speak in language that they can understand. So if I just talk about the purpose of why we use lipstick or lip gloss, right? What are the benefits in language that she can understand? Does it really matter what the chemical makeup is or the scientific name? Of course not. but we want to be able to connect in a way that the other person wants to be engaged in the conversation. So if someone is talking to me in Spanish and I don't understand Spanish, it's going to be hard for me to be engaged in that conversation. There may be a minute where I'm trying to decipher, but after a while, it's going to be so frustrating for me to begin to keep that conversation going. I'm going to get disengaged because it's too much work. So we want to think about, when it comes to language, listening to how someone else is communicating gives us clues on how we should be moving ahead. If someone is using slang, they may be in a more casual mood, or it could tell about their level of education. All these different things are clues that, as great communicators, we need to be mindful of when it comes to talking to someone else, right? So we want to make sure that we use language that they don't feel intimidated, they don't feel offended, inferior, less than, right? We want to use words that are we're able to communicate effectively, right? We want them to be engaged. The next thing is to be interested in the other person, right? So I could talk about myself all day, but I hear myself talking all day, right? I mean, that is just a part of who I am. So when we're in communication, we should be listening more than we should be talking. Now, one of the ways that we can easily accomplish this is to have a script in your head. Maybe you want to find out 3 things that about the other person, or 3 things that you have in common, or 3 things that they learned in 2021, or 3 of their goals for 2022. You want to think in threes, right? So this is an important thing to remember. Now, these questions can change whatever kind of resonates with you and whatever is organically happening. But this helps us to be interested. So if you have these questions in mind and you leave that conversation with none of those answers, it's probably because you've been doing most of the talking. So we want to remember that communication is a mutual exchange, right? Otherwise, there's no need for me to communicate to anybody else. If I'm going to be talking, I could go do that at home, right? Or in my car, or in the shower, all these different places that we entertain or have these conversations. So we want to think about, when we have someone in front of us, we want to engage with them more than telling them about ourselves. It should be a mutual exchange. When you are interested in other people, there is this effect where they believe that you're the nicest person. They don't know a lot about you, but because you're engaged and interested in them, it really has this halo effect. And this halo effect is them really seeing you as a kind person, possibly giving you a referral, all these other things, because oftentimes in our day, we are busy with the hustle bustle of life. We really often are distracted about bills or work or children or job, all these different things. And so we really don't have time to feel like we're seen and heard. So when we have someone that stops and pauses and takes some interest in what we're saying, it really gives us a big boost of endorphins, right? It makes us feel really good about ourselves, about the other person. And so this is a great way to accomplish this halo effect, simply by listening and engaging with some questions for the other person. So that is about being interested. The next thing is being present. Here recently, I heard this phrase, and they say that it's a Southern phrase: be present where your feet are. And I thought that was so profound, because so often we're in front of somebody, but we're looking at our phone, or, we're daydreaming about, what are we going to cook for dinner? Did I remember to run that errand? Did I turn the coffee pot off? What am I going to do tomorrow? How am I going to make it next week? What am I going to do this weekend? All these different things are going on in our head, and we're a million miles away from the conversation. So when you are present where your feet are, it is the opportunity for you to really sit and listen to what the other person is saying. Oftentimes, we are so busy trying to prepare our next response because that's the only way we can stay engaged, rather than simply taking the time to sit down and soak in what the other person is saying. I know that when I have a lot of conversations or just simple interviews with people on my podcast, they walk away from the podcast and say, "Wow, you just asked such great questions." And I'm thinking, I was just listening to what you were saying and it was interesting. And so it prompted a question. But a lot of times when we have this script of what we're going to say, we're not giving ourselves the opportunity to be present and to learn something new. There have been so many times that I have heard profound quotes or statements or takeaways about different things because I have simply slowed down enough to be present where my feet are. Now, this is usually something that can be very hard to practice because we're so used to feeling like we have to have all the answers. We have to be ready to act. We're kind of uncomfortable with the pause. We feel like it always has to be moving. But this is a time to really breathe, take some time to focus and listen to what the person is saying. Now, one of the ways that you can help yourself in this area is to think about taking notes. Taking notes actively as the person is talking. I started this practice after my own journey of dealing with depression and all this because I was so busy always trying to have an answer for everything, right? Thought I knew it all, didn't really think that, it was always debatable every conversation. But once I learned to write down maybe a question that it sparked, or they said something profound and I didn't want to forget it. So taking notes really helps you engage a little bit more in the conversation. And what another thing that's so positive about taking notes is it prevents you from interrupting people. When people are talking and engaging in conversation, there is a flow to the story or to, the moment. It's all about the energy that you're having in this conversation. So when someone is flowing, they're going with the story, it's really engaging. This is the time that you want to make sure that you take notes and not interfere with that momentum. Take the time to listen and take notes, and that's even more of a better opportunity to engage. So then when they pause, you can say, "This was great. I love that comment that you mentioned about B. I really like the example you use. And what I'm hearing you say is, I can apply this in my life with X or whatever, right?" So it gives you a little bit more time to not just respond, but you're able to apply whatever it is that you have a question about or the insight. You can keep the ball moving and engaging in that conversation. So imagine a conversation or communication as playing tennis. The whole goal is to keep the ball in the air. So you serve the ball to the other person, they serve it back, and you just keep going back in this back and forth. And so you stay and keep it engaged by making sure that you are present with what they're saying. This is the opportunity where their energy is high and they have some great clarity about what it is that they want to express. And they can really dive a little deeper and give you some added insight into whatever subject matter that they're discussing. And then the last thing with lips is solution thinking. This is really key because oftentimes when we have communication, we kind of don't have an end outcome, right? You can get on the phone with people and you're just talking and just kind of grasping at subject matters and things like that. But whenever you are engaging in conversation, you should make sure that it's purposeful. I made a resolution or whatever you want to call it last year in 2021. I was like, I'm wasting a lot of times in meetings that are not productive. Therefore, in all of 2021, I decided if someone wants to have a meeting with me, but they don't have an agenda, I'm not meeting. Because when you don't have an agenda, you don't have a roadmap of where you're going, you end up anywhere. You're on the phone for talking about the weather, talking about your job and family. And a lot of times those conversations are not really productive. So we want to make sure that we have an agenda, that we're clear about where we're headed. And this is a great opportunity to really practice solution oriented thinking. Now, so this call to actions, they could be simple. Um, Let me work on this project and I'll call you back on Friday, right? You want to set a specific time for follow up. Maybe it's just for you to gather information. You're going to gather that information. There are some formalities that you may say, hello, what's the weather like? Is the family okay? Happy New Year. A lot of these things are appropriate, but we want to make sure that we stick right to business. So a lot of times we really draw things out, we make them more problematic because we're not clear and concise on what it is that we want to accomplish from the call, the communication, and things of that nature. All right. So that is one thing, making sure that we are clear about what the purpose is for the call, right? What are we going to be discussing? Is there any information that we need to give to the other person ahead of time, right? Do we want to send them slides, any more added content, right? So that when we communicate, it is more of a reciprocal, mutual exchange rather than one person getting frustrated because the other one doesn't know what is actually going to be taking place. They don't know what is required of them. If it's a friendly conversation, is there a time limit on the call? So this is something that we often ignore, and we can have phone calls randomly that can last for hours and we're not productive, right? So there's nothing wrong if you have a few minutes of free time in your day, you want to reach out to a friend, or a friend is reaching out to you, then put a time limit on it. Hey, I'm so glad to hear from you. This is a work day for me, but I do have about 20 minutes to spare. How can I help you? Set the timer. Be proactive about your time. Communicating is simply making sure that you establish boundaries and that you let the other person know. Now, we don't have to infringe any of our beliefs or ideals on other people when we're communicating, but we are simply letting them know where we stand, right? So, one of the things that really is important about communication is having a state of not being judgmental, right? So, this is another thing with solution oriented thinking. You don't want to be judgmental of how someone is managing their time, why they're not prepared, or whatever it is that you may be creating as a standard for this other person. These things can be felt. It's like an energy that comes up that really can throw things off. Either the other person can feel it or you can feel it, and it just doesn't allow the conversation to flow. So you want to make sure that when you're thinking about communicating with people, it is simply to make sure that you are discussing the business at hand. So if I have a situation where I am asking someone to provide me with some information, then I want to be clear about keeping that conversation related to that information. So let's say that I have a report that's due on Friday, and I'm meeting with someone on Monday. And on Monday, we had planned to have an outline together, talk about the topics, and really decide how we're going to make this presentation on Friday. Who's going to do what or whatever. Now, if we get together on Monday and the other person doesn't have their materials that we agreed upon, right? This is the thing with language. Language can be verbal or nonverbal. So they're not prepared. But if you read their body language, what is their body language saying? See, a lot of times we just put fuel on the fire instead of really taking some time to be present where our feet are and figure out how we can come to an amicable solution. So the person's not ready. I'm looking at them. They just don't seem themselves. They are not up to par as to how they usually show up. So this is an opportunity for you to really take note and figure out what is really happening here, right? Is it really about this information not being provided, or is something else going on with this person, right? And so based on some of the clues, you believe, hey, something really could be going on, right? And so this is an opportunity for you to really communicate about the subject matter. Hey, Sally, I noticed that, we're here at the meeting and you don't have the materials for today. Is there something that I could do to help you? Simply asking that and acknowledging it. A lot of times when it comes to deadlines, projects, we can get so focused on the job that we forget that people are human. We forget that they have real life issues. Right now, we have people that are coming down with COVID by droves, right? We have people who are, their jobs have changed because they can't go into work physically. The place is shut down. They're working from home, or they're temporarily laid off, or a family member sick and they're being a caretaker. I mean, there's so many different things going on. It's important for us to make sure that we are approachable for people to communicate with us in a way that we can be solution oriented. So imagine if you have a coworker who has a loved one who has COVID and they feel like they can't even talk about it. Imagine the pressures about, being worried about this loved one, or maybe they've been up all night trying to care for them and keep them in quarantine, or whatever the case may be. Maybe they're doing their work, because they're homesick, and so they're helping them with their workload and their own. It could be a number of things, or they're helping with their kids. Their kids have to stay with you because they're quarantined at home. I mean, it's a number of things that we just don't begin to even take note of when it comes to our communication with other people. So you want to be mindful of looking at the things that are said, and more importantly, the things that are not said. Take an interest in the people, right? Those formalities are not just for formality, right? When you ask someone, hi, how are you doing? It should be really a conscious and intentional question so that you can connect with someone in a way that helps them realize that you're human as well as they are, right? So we want to be mindful of being approachable, because after all, it doesn't do any good to have the best plan for a team and it not be executed because no one is able to communicate the values, the importance of whatever it is that we want to enforce, right? And all that comes from good, healthy communication. So when we're thinking about communicating to people and they're not coming to the table with things that we've asked them, we also want to make sure and get out of our own way and ego. Maybe we didn't communicate it effectively, right? So this really is true when it comes to children doing their chores. It's like, hey, go in there and clean up your room. But clean to them is everything underneath their bed, or they threw everything in a drawer, right? So then when you tell them to lay their clothes out for school tomorrow, they don't know where anything is because they've thrown it under the bed or just put it in a random drawer, and things are not where they should be, right? And so that's another thing with communication. So when we communicate with people, their level of something could be different than ours. So this is where the language piece comes back into it again. You know, if I say, oh, I want to be successful, well, my measure of success may look different than somebody else, right? I may be into being able to travel, vacation, but somebody else is into, oh, I want to have a new car. I want to have a new house. I want to have a name brand clothing or something like that. So we have to have a language that is amicable, right? Something that we can agree on is the same definition. And so this is so important to make sure that you're in with like-minded people. Now, everybody that you encounter may not be like-minded, but what happens is you begin to ask questions rather than assuming. So if I say, oh, I want to be successful in my career, my idea of success may be different than someone else. But if I'm clear about communicating effectively, I might say, oh, you want to be successful? Well, tell me what your definition of success is. But oftentimes we just assume that our definition of success is their definition of success. So later on, when we have these hiccups or we're not on the same page about certain things, we get upset because we just assume rather than simply asking them what their definition of success is. So I hope that's a clear example for everybody. We have to be mindful of remembering that communication is a mutual exchange. And it's not about what you want or what you believe. It's about being able to communicate in a conversation to where both parties are able to express their opinions and perspective, and coming together in a way where it's not about transforming somebody to your way of thinking or vice versa, but it's simply being able to accept people as they are and communicating in a way to where you don't have to make a clone of yourself in order to engage in conversation, right? We should be able to communicate with people from all different backgrounds, different races, different ages, gender, right? We want to be able to do this efficiently and effectively because the world is a rainbow of people. Everyone has a different perspective, and a lot of times we make assumptions. Oh, this person's a mom, so they know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, although a lot of times we do have some things with motherhood that's in common, but we all have different ways of doing things. I had a neighbor when we first moved to a military city, and we had a neighbor that their kids went to bed at 7:30. Now, it would be light outside in the summertime. We had long summers, and the kids would be in the bed. And I'm here with my kids. I think they were staying up to like 9:30, and I'm thinking 7:30. How do you get anything done? Because we have our kids in soccer. So by the time you get done with soccer, come home, get them their dinner, getting ready for bed. I mean, there is no way I could have put them in the bed at 7:30. But yes, we do have similarities with putting our kids down for bed, but people do things differently. They have different perspectives. And it's important to not just assume, but find ways that you can engage in conversation, learn about what they're doing, teach them about what you're doing so that you guys can learn from one another. And that is really the goal when it comes to communication. We want to be able to learn from other people. We don't want to just inflict our beliefs on people. We want to be able to have an exchange that's mutual so that we can learn and continue to grow and be better versions of ourselves. So I want to thank you guys for watching today. Please reach out to me. I have my email going across the bottom of the screen. If you do have any topics, any interests, please email me. I would love to really dive into some of those topics that you find valuable when it comes to your business, marketing, and mindset. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a phenomenal week, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.